Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We are here talking all things inner work. And I just want to remind our listeners, and if you're a new listener, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here. Our show title, Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life, is really because our intention for the show is to help people understand that inner work is beautiful work and it can create your beautiful life if you're willing to dedicate your life to doing your own beautiful work. So, Laurel,
Yes.
what do you think?
I love that you reminded our listeners and me of that because we talk about this that
Yeah,
the work sometimes feels uncomfortable.
yeah.
Sometimes we have resistance to the work, but calling it beautiful work as you do and did, um it shifts my perspective, right?
Yeah,
I always want to do the hard work when I know something beautiful is going to come from it.
yeah,
You're a gardener. Talk about gardening. Gardening is hard work and it's messy,
yeah, yeah,
but you do it because you know what's coming. And
yeah.
that's what I love about the beautiful work.
So good. I love that metaphor too, don't you? Yeah. So this month that we're in right now, we're focusing on nourishment and really thinking about it in an expansive way compared to just, the nourishment that we get from food. And one of the things I was thinking about, and I can't remember whether we mentioned this in the last episode, but one of the things I was thinking about, Laurel, was how, as we're evolving and as we're struggling, with our farming industry and, mass producing food, shall we say, for the world. And we know now that, the food is getting a little less healthy. And so oftentimes, we are craving things or our body wants things and it really wants something healthy and something really truly nourishing because we can, if you're not careful, be stuck in cycles of eating a lot of empty food. And so that creates even more of a sense of what our topic is all about today, which is what are you hungry for? What are you really hungry for?
I love this topic for so many reasons.
I do too.
You
I do
know,
too.
I've been using the word nourishing a lot lately in my vocabulary, and I've been noticing the word is everywhere. I think
Mm,
people are really looking for nourishment.
yes.
And just think about the difference when we tie nourishing to food, right?
Mhm.
But nourishing for me is anything that really fills me, right? Fills my cup.
Yeah.
And how different that is from the word maybe delicious, right? I
Mhm.
can have delicious food that is not nourishing. I
Mhm.
can have a delicious experience that is not nourishing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And as I look to have nourishing experiences in my life, I feel much more nourished just by seeking that out.
Yes, yes, I love that. Yeah, so how this work of just of being able to truly identify what are you really hungry for will begin with asking yourself that. I really want to start there, Laurel, right? Because I think it is that idea of, you know, uh, if you come with us on this exploration this month of nourishment, right? And your own nourishment and explore the word a little bit more, and explore how you're and what you're taking in to fill your cup, so to speak. It's a great time to just let that question almost be a mantra. What am I really hungry for?
Yeah. Yes. And the question I ask a lot is, what does feeling nourished feel like? Like,
Yeah.
how does my body feel when I am nourished?
Yes. How do I
And
feel all over?
that's
Because
right.
I think that's another thing, right? It's not even just a bodily kind of sensation. It's this bigger, more expansive feeling of like, ah, satisfied, you know?
Complete,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how
Full.
and
Yeah.
how different, are those words as we bring them to our
Mm-hmm.
life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I can think of so many things, and it is a personal, individual exploration, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, I I don't know what someone else, no matter how close I am to another person, what they are really hungry for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they are feeling nourished and complete,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I can ask and help them really feel into what that might feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk for a minute about where do we begin when we
Yeah.
start that self exploration?
I really think that really asking yourself the question is so, so important. I can't over say that or over, share here in terms of how important the simplicity of that can be is the pause, before you take something in, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book, whether it's a meal, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a coffee with a friend or an associate, like asking yourself, right? Before you partake, what am I really hungry for? And using that word hunger for like, what is it I'm coming into this space to consume and to have and to experience in this time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The word consumption, and as you were talking, even before you said the word consume, all of the things you mentioned,
Yeah.
I put in the category of consumption. And when I think about healthy consumption, for me personally, it is every input I am receiving into my physical body. It's the sounds, it's the sights, it's the light, the darkness, it is the food, it is the water, and it's even the products I use on my skin, right? What am I consuming? What am I purchasing and bringing into my life? What am I bringing into my home? Like it is all of that. Um, and sometimes we don't know what it is we're looking for. A great example comes to mind with retail therapy. I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life that I would shop as if it were entertainment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would purchase because there's always great deals to be had, and how can you pass up a deal?
Yep.
And when I got home, I knew I didn't I didn't need that item. I might not even have room in my closet for that item, right? And when we talk about nourishment and consumption, we often think about food because you know what that feels like
Yeah.
when you don't need another bite of something delicious, but you take
I
it.
take it anyway. Oh, I'm always so sorry. I do it. I still do it, everybody. I'm going to confess right here. Be my witnesses. I do it. I don't want to do it. I still do it. I can't help it. I
Right?
love good food.
Of course. And I love good bargains, right? But I
Yeah.
don't do that anymore because my home is full,
Yeah.
right? My
Yeah.
home is complete. So
Mhm.
I want our listeners to think about this. And sometimes we don't know we're complete until we actually bring one more thing in. I did it the other day with the podcast. I was driving in the car. It's
Yeah.
a podcast that I love. I turned it on. 2 minutes. I was like, that is not what I need right now.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
shut it off.
Yes, yes. So this is part of it, right? Is the recognizing if you're asking yourself, right? Like you're really paying attention to the word nourishment, right? And you're looking around and you're seeing, where is it coming up and how is it showing up? And so the willingness to look at it, to ask yourself the question, what am I really hungry for? What do I really want? What would nourish me right now? Right? Using these questions allows you to get in touch with yourself. And so the minute that you start to consume something or something's not resonating that you would do habitually, you you question it. You go, wait a minute, do I really want this right now? Oh, I don't really want this right now. And that's a great example, that podcast example. I know for me, I was walking over the weekend, and oftentimes when I walk, I listen to my podcast time. It's great. Love that's an opportunity, right? To get some exercise and not necessarily focus on the exercise part if I'm not in the mood to, right? And what I realized was on the weekend when I'm walking, I want something light and um I don't know, something that's going to nourish me in a different kind of way. And so I actually put on Ina Garten's podcast and was listening to her talking about cooking and cooking with somebody, some famous person, that came to visit her at her beautiful farm on the Hamptons in Long Island, and so they're walking through the garden. And so for me, it was like listening. I was sitting, I was there with them, like here it is, it's a weekend. And now I'm sitting with a star, I'm cooking with them with Ina, like in my mind, like I'm off in another world doing this thing. And it was very different than my usual, listening to astrology and finding out what the stars and the moons are doing and what's the energetic cycle that's beneficial to us right now, and some of the things I otherwise would listen to. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I love that because it is true. Something that we might be nourishing for us in one instance isn't always, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and let's talk for a minute about when I think about how to recognize what it is you're really hungry for. One of the ways I often try to identify, especially if I can feel this longing for something and I can't put my finger on it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. We often experience, I think that's kind of a universal feeling. Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you do?
I try to identify where in my body I feel the void.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I really, that embodied self-awareness, do the body scan.
Yeah.
What parts of my body feel full and what parts of my body feel less than full and which parts of my body feel empty,
Oh, that's
right?
great. Yeah.
And so by noticing, where is the void and maybe even bringing some awareness to if I could describe it as a color, right? So
Hmm.
you identify the location in your body.
Hmm.
If I could put a color to it, what color would it be? If I could put a shape to it, what shape could it be? Would it be?
Yeah.
And thinking about giving it some characteristics maybe
Hmm.
helps me identify what might fill that void, what might be nourishing. So if it's golden color or a warm color and round with soft edges, I know, well, how to fill that void. I need something warm and soft.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
You
That's
know,
great.
if
Yeah. I'm thinking about when I was studying Chinese medicine, when I was teaching Tai Chi and taking a lot of classes with my instructor and learning a lot about different aspects of Chinese medicine. And one of the things that we, were um, talking about was food, the elements of food. And one of the diagnoses or one of the ways that they identify cravings, right? One of the things they said was like sugar or sweet cravings often have to do with desiring the mother bond. So I always think of like if I'm desiring something sweet, I question, am I looking for some sort of intimate connection that I'm lacking, right? Some sort of bond or some sort of experience of being more connected in the world than I'm feeling right now, right? So I know for me, one of my clues for what am I really hungry for is being able to get a little bit clearer in like, what am I feeling? Here I am. I want something. I don't know what it is I want, and I'm probably trying to fill something because I want something, right? And so, what's the feeling that I'm trying to connect with or fill in some way, right? Another way to ask yourself, like, what part of you feels neglected, right? Because oftentimes, if we feel neglected, we want to fill it. We want to, make it feel fuller, right? And so, this idea of being able to identify, because I think that in the lifestyles that we've adopted in the Western world, we neglect parts of our lives that don't feel fulfilled, and we're trying to fill them with things that aren't going to work.
yes, or we fill other areas of our lives or overfill other areas so that we don't notice the emptiness in one other area.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Um, just reminds me of, really understanding our own comfort or discomfort in the emptiness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have some thoughts about, I don't like to focus on what I'm lacking, right? Because I
Mhm.
believe what we focus on grows.
Yeah.
So if I'm focused on the lack, I probably feel more lack. If I focus on the disconnection in a
Mhm.
relationship, I I I feel more of that, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it's that fine balance between really identifying the void and reminding yourself of how that void would feel, how you would feel if you were fully nourished,
Yeah.
right? And then the next question is, what areas of my life are fully nourished, and why, right? And how can
Mhm.
I bring those nourishing things from this part of my life, similar things, into the part that isn't fully nourished?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you give an example, Laurel, that will help maybe the listeners to
Oh, sure. Yeah.
digest that?
Yeah. So this is a great example. When
Yeah.
I was working in my corporate career in community relations, now I was a very busy woman with lots of external connections, very external faced job. Now I served 67 communities in New Hampshire, but I worked in an area that I didn't live in. So I was really focused on, I live in Concord, New Hampshire. I don't have connection there. I don't have community there. I was really feeling a void in my relationship in my community. So I started what I call bean counting. I started making a list every day of the people by name that I connected with every day.
Wow. Yeah.
And I realized I was connecting with 15, 20, 30 people every day.
Yeah.
And it might not be in my community that I live in, but in my community, I I had a lot of connection in my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so realizing, that, right, that, oh, I'm feeling a void, but do I have a void? And then I could look at, if I have so much connection in my work life, what are the ways I do that? How can I transfer those skills, talents, activities into my home community?
That's great.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because often I think what we're missing, we if we hyper focus on one little segment of
Hmm.
our beingness, we feel a void. If we start looking at a more holistic,
Yeah.
you know, is it a void? Are we complete from a more holistic place?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that um what it does too is help set you on the path of how can I find nourishment in this area, right? And so the question, I love questions, as we always say, this curiosity factor is sometimes the most empowering kind of questions that you can ask when you're curious is, how can I nourish myself in the areas of my life that do feel neglected or I don't feel fulfilled in? How can I start to experiment a little bit or take myself out of my comfort zone to discover, what it is maybe I really want? Because sometimes when it's not fulfilled, it's that you don't really know what you want. And so the experimentation or the curiosity will help with that a little bit too. Yeah.
It will. I can think of so many other examples.
Mhm.
Um, in relationships, right? Often we focus on a singular relationship
Yeah.
and we are not fully nourished.
Yeah.
But again, if we look at
The whole
the
pie chart of
yeah,
relationships. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of our needs are being met. We are fully nourished, maybe not by one person. And I think it was a wise old friend of mine named Laurel Holland that reminded me of this not that long ago, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, I want to say this because I think this is so important, especially to our, our women. I know we have a lot of women listeners and women, again, our psychology is we develop in relationship to others. That's part of our psychological experience in the world of evolving and growing. And so our relationships are really important. And if you look at your relationship pie chart or bullseye or circle, put the people all that you have connection with all around. And if it is lacking, to me, it's an indication that you don't really know how to fulfill the kind of, or to find the kind of relationships that you probably are longing for, that you're hungry for. And that's going to require getting out of your comfort zone and going and being in places that you're not used to being. I know for me, I go back to this. I don't have a huge circle of people. I'm an introvert. I can't have a huge amount of people in my life, but the ones that I have, I'm very, very close to. And so my small circle nourishes me really, really well. And the places that I've gone and the kinds of experiences I've had have also created intimate connections. So even though I don't see those people, I know they're there. I know I could
Yes.
call on them if I needed them. Yeah.
Yes. And, when I think about that nourishment, right? The abundance, the lack, the nourishment, the hunger, that contrast, I think you touched on a really important point, knowing we have access, right?
Yeah.
Like when I think about food, right? When I grew up in a family of five and we all say we had to get we had to get our slice of the pie because somebody else
Gonna
was
be
going to get it if
gone.
we didn't,
That's
right?
right.
But knowing that we have access to nourishing qualities, nourishing relationships, that we have access to nourishing food, we have access to nourishing, you know, belongings.
Yeah.
Like for me, being able to know I have access really is, it makes me feel complete, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to, there are many people in the world that don't have access,
Yes.
but that might be a question of, as we individually look at what we are needing, what are our needs? How are our needs being met? You know, the question maybe is, how can I share my access and nourishment with others?
Yeah, that's great. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And the image that was coming up for some reason as I was listening, the image that was coming up was kind of in an egg from a chicken that has been stuck in a cage, no outside whatever, and been fed only one little tiny kind of nourishment, right? And an egg that has been from a chicken that's run around and been in a field and consumed natural greens growing in the soil and been given good food. And even just the consumption of that emptier egg versus the fuller egg, literally, when you eat them side by side, one makes you feel fuller and last longer in your body as a way of making you feel good and feel food, feel filled, feel healthy. And it's the same with relationships.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's the same with all the stuff, work that matches you really well, where you can give and express yourself fully, feels so different than a task that you don't have to bring yourself to, or you can do mindlessly, you don't care about, that means nothing to you. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about fulfillment and nourishment, right?
Yes. And the energetic component of being nourished, right?
Yeah.
Both of those eggs are the same physical thing, but the energy of nourishment starts from at a very, very
Yeah.
different place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, listeners, here's your challenge. What do you know? What are you hungry for? Asking
Yeah.
yourself, What are you hungry for? You know, look at your life. What are you hungry for in your relationships that you don't have? In your work life, what are you hungry for that you don't have? In your recreational experience, what are you hungry for that you don't have? In your food, you know, in your day-to-day routine of food, what are you hungry for that you're not consuming, you know, that you're not
Yes.
having? And how can you begin to dip your toe in the water and get out there and get some of that? Yeah.
Yes. And if you ask yourself that question, listeners, and the answer is, I don't know what I'm hungry for, I'm going to suggest the very first place to start is doing an inventory of
Yeah.
your needs. What are your needs, right? What are your needs and your wants? What are your dreams and desires, right? And then how do you want to feel? That inventory will help you to really unearth what you might be hungry for.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All
All
right.
right.
Let's go nourish ourselves.
This I'm going to say this so it's always nourishing to spend a little bit of time with you, Laurel, and
Always
our
nourishing.
listeners. Knowing
Always.
knowing that our listeners are out there just fills my cup. So,
I
thank you,
know.
listeners.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing your beautiful work with us. We so excited to offer a place and a space to do some beautiful work together really soon. So there'll be more of that to come. We'll be talking about that in the days ahead.
Great. I'll
All
see
right.
you see you
Off we
soon.
go. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.